who is always trying to sabotage me on a Thursday morning. If it's not too cold, today, because Gareth's not here, she's like even starting me up late. See, I still have people in the studio trying to set it all up. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everybody. No, I can't hear anyone. I can't hear Tati. Hello, Tati. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yeah, I'm totally here, Phumi. I can
Ah,
hear you. Yeah.
you hear us perfectly. Well,
Good
we've got a
morning.
special friend today. We've got a guest who has joined me because and he's sitting in for Gareth. So he's sitting in for Gareth, not me.
Uh,
My friend Tati Ithateng Mokgoro is joining us this morning, and he is the curator, as he told me some years ago, of TedX Joburg and not the convener. He is the person that is in charge of putting the whole show together. I'm sure you've seen TED or you've seen a TED talk in your life. Um, and there is a very special TED talk happening in the next couple of weeks. Tati, when is the TED talk? When is TEDx
uh,
Joburg happening?
that is in about 2 weeks' time, the 27th of October, TEDx Johannesburg live, past, present, future.
This is the reason why I've asked you to join me because it's such a crazy concept for me that you have
Mhm.
all of these um, people convening here in Joburg, just a couple of
Mhm.
kilometers away from the cradle of humankind, to talk
Yes,
about not just today and the amazing things that they are doing, but also how it is connected to the past and what it means for our future.
absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about some of the people that are coming before we get into all of the other things.
Yeah.
Because we're not just like punting Ted, you're here to play the Gareth part. So you're going to
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
sing, you're going to have to be funny, and you're going to have to drive the conversation this morning.
Wow. Okay. Wish me luck. But here's what it is. I mean, central to this whole event are three particular questions. Where do we come from? Why are we here? How can we preserve our planet for generations to come? That's really what the conference is about. And we've gone and worked with people who study life, the history of life itself. They go deep, deep into the past, all the way back to the very beginning of planet Earth and how the planet formed and all the layers of rocks and sediment that accumulated over the time and the beginnings of single cellular life that started way back then, billions of years ago. They've been able to find traces of it and study it and predict where it goes next. And then they've then gone on to study the dinosaurs that came after that, eons and epochs later. And from that, they've gone on to study, our own ancestors, the very early humans who walked this planet before we came here. Some of them we can probably, find direct connections to, right? And then also more modern life, more like life that is hundreds of thousands of years old, which is, in relative terms, fairly modern, right? But also connected to today and also to the future, you know. And that's who we're working with, and that's who we've invited to the event to share what they know with us. And we can't wait to unpack all of it with you.
So when I was looking at the lineup
Yeah,
and all of the various people that are coming, one of the people, and I hope I read this right,
yeah,
and what she does
yeah,
is look at objects that have been discovered, that have been uncovered from the
yeah,
past to kind of figure out what people back then, how they lived, what they ate, what they did. And
yeah,
that kind of made me think about all of the stuff that we do today, like
yeah.
painting our fingernails. And I'm wondering
Aha.
what people in the future are going to uncover about us. The
Yeah,
fact that we don't
yeah,
have electricity. So I was just
yeah.
like,
Well,
I wonder what it is that they'll uncover about us and if they'll get it right. Like how
Mhm.
right do they get it? All of the stuff that was happening back then.
Well, the
How
science
do I
is,
say what
yeah.
she did?
Um,
Paleoanthropologist. No?
no, I think you're talking about Jessica Thompson, who is
Yes,
a
Jessica.
Paleolithic anthropologist.
Anthropologist.
Yes, I mean everybody is some sort of gist, right? And she's a Paleolithic anthropologist. Um, and she studies deep life, of course, life from the deep past, and but because she's an anthropologist, she doesn't just study the rocks. She also studies the human interactions and using the things that humans left behind. For example, beads, that she found in Malawi, and she's been able to trace how people lived in those environments, and from that you can deduce quite a bit about the lives that people lived. She particularly focuses on how ancient people managed the environment. The fact that, for example, she makes the point that for a long time people used to people used to burn the veld around them just to control any wild veld fires that might come. Sometimes you need to do that, and people have been doing it for a long time. But the bigger point she makes is that we should not be afraid to manage our environment. We and managing our environment doesn't mean we have to fence it up, and stay away from it. Like create the Kruger National Park, for example, and live in the city where we live in concrete, where we should be more integrated into the environment to manage it. And we've been doing that since forever. But we just need to be more responsible in how we do it. There's a lot of people who are arguing, for example, with climate change, that we should leave the environment alone and live in the cities, in the concrete jungle. And her point is that that is unsustainable. We have to live together with nature, but we have to do it more responsibly. The thing about us is that we come and we trample on nature and we mess it up and we create the
We take
disaster that we are looking at
everything.
now. Mm.
We take over everything. That's the thing
We,
about us.
yeah, yeah. Because we
Eventually.
read in a book somewhere that we have been given dominion and we may do as we please. But this is the result. This is the result.
We read in a book somewhere. I'm not going to go down that route with you. I'm going to go down with that route with you. But you know what I'm also just thinking about is about,
Yeah,
so you have been a TED fellow
yeah.
for many, 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 many years.
Hmm.
And the thing about TED is all of the mind blowing things that people talk about. And you've been not just with TEDx Joburg, but actually to quite a number of TED events around various cities around the world.
Yeah,
And I was in a conference, a digital conference last year.
yeah.
And one of the people that was talking, okay, thank you. One of the people that was talking said, "You know why carrots are orange?" And I was like, "What?" Couldn't actually, how have I never known this before? And he said, "Ted, carrots are orange because they come from the Netherlands." And I was like, nah, this guy's talking shit. That's not true. And when I Googled it,
Yeah,
there are all sorts of carrots, and they're not orange
yeah,
because they come from the
yes.
Netherlands and it's their national color. And I was
Yeah.
wondering about this last night. What has been the most mind blowing concepts that you've heard at TED Talks that were like, "Ooh."
Ah, too many to mention. But I tell you what, in 2008, I was in the room when Jill Bolt Taylor delivered a talk that she titled, I think it was My Stroke of Insight. And she's a neuroscientist, right? She's a neuroscientist, so she studies the brain. And she had a stroke, but she had enough consciousness as she was experiencing the stroke to actually follow the stroke in her own brain. I mean, that is a totally rare situation where somebody is actually studying, a mental or brain dysfunction from inside the brain, and is actually able to follow it and document it. And she came out of it at the end of it to tell us about it, which was totally awesome. That's like dying and coming back to tell us what the trip was like, or just going on a trip to Mount Everest and coming back to tell us what that was like. That was just totally mind blowing for me. And I was in the room that day, which
Oh,
was
wow.
doubly fantastic. Yeah, that for me is just the most awesome. Uh, I mean, there are lots of others. I mean, there's a talk about consciousness. There's always something wonderful to learn whenever somebody talks about consciousness. Why we and why we feel and why we reflect on why we exist.
Mhm.
These are big questions, and I don't know if ants have the same questions, if dogs have the same questions, but these are the questions that make us human. That's why we end up creating the things that we do, taking objects out into space to look back to ourselves and see ourselves in a bigger void, and to look away and see where we fit in. These are the things that we do. These are, and this is where, for me, where Ted lives, and which, there's no 1 second that is boring inside this world. I just love it, and I wish more people can come in, but I've seen more people coming in over the years.
You started out as a designer.
I still am.
How you and I met was you were in advertising, right?
Yeah, yes.
How did you connect those two worlds, and what made you make that leap? What is the thing that made you go, I actually want to be one of the people that brings this awesome concept to South Africa, to Johannesburg, my city,
Yeah.
and put the ideas of people in my city out into the world?
For me, I started off in architecture, by the way. I studied architecture, went in and worked in advertising and then design and then TED and TEDx and all of that. I see the bits and pieces that you need to build something. So I read that. So instead of just copy or visuals or bricks and mortar, I see these things as elements that you need to understand and then bring together to build a bigger whole. So, for me, it doesn't matter whether you're working in architecture or you're working in advertising or you're putting together a conference. The important thing is to understand that you're working with elements that could work together to create a fantastic, beautiful thing. And so I follow that. And, at the center of it, there's always the idea: what are you creating and why are you doing it? And what's the end goal? If you follow that, and you understand the elements, you can work with anything, in my view. And so advertising promised ideas. That's what advertising promises. But it's commercial ideas to sell products and to get more people to buy more of this particular thing. And Ted promised me ideas to understand the world, the universe, humanity, progress, and our place in it. And I found that more satisfying, uh, more meaningful. I'm not saying advertising is not meaningful,
Mm.
but this is the path that I'm following, and this is why people come here. This is why people come to TED and TEDx, because they want to understand what's going on. Because this can be confusing. You're on this little rock shooting through the deep dark black at incredible speeds, and it's spinning while it's doing that, and apparently it's also turning, and you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where it's going. That can be totally terrifying. We want to know what the hell is going on here. And some people have the answers.
Absolutely. So San Marie says, you're very interesting, but also wants to know how one gets involved.
Aha.
So TED works with a network of volunteers. How does one get involved?
Well, there's Big Ted. Big Ted happening in Vancouver once a year. It's a fantastic conference. You pay, if you have $12,000, you can get in, but you still need to ask them if you can come. And if they say yes, maybe you can. Okay. But TED has been so wonderful to make a license available for people around the world who qualify to apply for licenses and name the event after their city. We are TEDx Johannesburg. There's a TEDx Pretoria, TEDx Cape Town, TEDx London, TEDx Sydney, and so on and so forth. We are TEDx Johannesburg. And if you want to get involved, you can get involved as a volunteer. So we work as volunteers. We have day jobs, but we work as volunteers. It takes over our lives, but we do work as volunteers. And you can come in and join the team and help organize the events. You could be a speaker. There, you have to do incredible work that moves humanity forward. We have to find you and invite you to speak. You could also work. You could also come in as a partner. You have money, maybe you want to see this work happen. Just come in and put it in, and faki mali zobona, as they say. We can help make it happen for you. So yeah, multiple ways you can get involved. And of course, as a viewer of the talks, just keep watching, sharing, following the events, whether in the city, around South Africa, or globally.
So Marco, happy birthday to Marco, who's sending us a message that today is his birthday, which I think is very apt, right? Because this is how we started this conversation. It's about figuring out who we are in the world, where we are, why we're here, and where it's all going, or at least
Yeah,
trying to kind of unravel it and unpack it for
yeah.
ourselves and and everybody else. And I'm just, you know,
Ah,
talking about Ufagi Mali,
yeah.
one of the things that seems to have become a definite driver for a lot of people and a lot of the things that we do is the money, right? Which is a relatively new concept if you're talking about
Yeah.
all the way back then in the cradle of mankind and how humanity was developing. But I'm wondering what it looks like into the future. Is it as the various components and the various conversations that are happening at this particular TEDx?
Mhm.
What is the role of economics and money particularly looking like or
Yeah.
being forecasted? Are you having that conversation?
Well, let me start by saying happy birthday to Marco. Happy
Marco.
birthday to you, Marco. Happy birthday,
Okay,
Marco.
singing today, tick.
Hey, winning. Yeah. Okay, money. Look, there is no one particular discussion about money, not one particular one, but the discussion about economics is spread throughout, the whole event, and other, especially the anthropologists in the event. There are various types of anthropologists, Paleolithic, as you mentioned earlier on, or just plain, anthropologists plus bio something something. So people who study the actual human body and those who study societies and so on and so forth. Uh, that discussion will be in there, and many of them will touch on bartering and all sorts of forms and ways in which humans exchange value, and while we'll focus largely on the history of life, the discussion is how does that history affect the present, and what should we, and then we project that to the future. Um, there aren't a whole lot of talks about, you know transhumanism, for example, and that is implied in the work that we cover, and that's a discussion, under a different theme. But these speakers will touch on how the ways in which we govern societies today is likely to evolve going into the future. These are people who speak in very big time scales, so they have a very fine sense of understanding of what it means to, when you talk about 250 million years ago versus 1 million years ago versus, 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, they work with those numbers. So when they project forward, they'll be talking about the evolution of humans or the evolution of the planet, and the evolution of human society. So indeed, of course, exchanging value will be part of it, but it's not a discussion about Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is a small part of the broader projection of the future.
Sure. That is
Mhm.
actually quite fascinating and quite exciting in a way, because I think what this conversation is doing for me is a lot of scientific conversation, and suddenly it's exciting, like
Yeah,
long ago before, when you think paleontology, when you think archaeology, when you think
yeah,
anthropology,
yes,
these concepts are all really what you're studying: rocks or dinosaurs or bones or stuff found so
yes,
very long ago.
yeah,
But it suddenly makes it so real and makes it, wow, something that can be part of my today. And I think, look, for me, one of the things that is most exciting about all of those things is it's not far from here. You can just
yeah,
go to the
yeah,
cradle, you
yeah,
can take a drive out to the cradle on a Sunday morning, you can walk around there, you can go on hikes, you can go into the caves,
yeah,
and suddenly you're transported right back into
yeah,
that space. And it's always been mind blowing that we're so concerned with like the past, what, 40, some people
Yes.
maybe 400 years of South African
Yes. Yes.
colonialism, but
Yeah.
actually we're the custodians of the history of humanity that goes so much further.
Yeah.
And there's so much
Yeah.
more to what humans are about and what human
Absolutely.
relationships are about.
Absolutely. Spot on. Spot on. And South Africa, this particular region of the world is probably amongst the most special in the whole world when it comes to the history of life. This is where the library is. The very spot that you and I are sitting on right now, below this ground. Everybody is aware of the minerals that lie under this ground. We are all aware of that. That has created our history. But few of us are aware of the history that lies buried under this ground. That because of the stability of the ground over millions of years, it means that the fossils are well preserved. If you
Mm,
want to learn about the history of life, you cannot talk about the history of life without talking about South Africa. This is where they all come to figure it all out. This is where all the answers lie. This is the most special, or one of the most special places on the planet if you are interested in the history of life, and therefore
mm,
again the future of life. This is it. And the Karoo is a particularly special place because the Karoo used to lie under the sea. The Karoo used to be under the sea. There used to be a whole ocean above it. When the continents were one, when the whole thing was Pangea, the Karoo was the center of Gondwana. I think you might have heard about Gondwana. This Karoo was the center of that. And the oceans lower, the land rose, and all the animals over the years, layer after layer, got buried under the sea. So from dinosaurs right at the beginning to skeletons of more recent humans and
mm.
animals and plants and all sorts of things. That's where you go if you want to read life. That's the library. That's where it is here, this part of the world. We're not very aware of that. I don't think we make enough of that. And before you start touching on the fact that the earliest humans are found on this continent. Whether it's East Africa or Southern Africa, that's up for debate, but this is the continent where they come from. They left this place, many of them, and they crossed into the Middle East and some into Asia, others into Europe. Many of them have recently come back. And we start
Mm,
counting history only 400 years ago when some of them came back here, as if nothing happened before that. But we all come
mm,
from here. We're all just literally one people. And if you look at the animals as well, you realize that if you go back further, we're actually all connected. Us and
mm.
chimpanzees and cats and dogs and dinosaurs way back. We come from the same cells, initial
Yeah,
cells.
yeah.
We're all one thing. It's weird and fascinating for me.
It's exciting. And I
Yeah,
suppose then it's, kind of doing that work, I suppose, also changes the perspective that we have about each other, or it
yeah.
should
It
change the
should.
perspective about what we have,
Yeah,
what we share, what makes us
mm,
the same and what makes us different, and all
yeah,
of the things that we fight about. So
yeah.
Simpiwe is also over here reminding me that even though this is an incredibly fascinating conversation, I have to do like other stuff because it's 6:30. Can you believe it? It is already 6:30. And one of the things that we do have to do is talk
Yes,
about the news. And so
yes.
this is the exciting thing
Mm,
about this show is we can go from talking about the history of humanity and what the future looks like, and we can shock ourselves um, with the things that are super exciting, like Khloe Kardashian, because this is the first news item that Simpiwe sends me to say we have to talk about Khloe Kardashian. And I'm
okay.
always grateful, so grateful that there are pictures here because I never know which one is Chloe. But
Yeah,
also,
and
she does
yeah,
so much plastic surgery and
yeah,
changing of herself that even if you
yeah.
think you knew what she looked like, she may look incredibly different because this is the picture that I'm looking at. This,
Okay.
believe it or not, is in the BBC. This is a news article in the BBC, guys. Khloe Kardashian has had a rare tumor removed from her face. What? Small
From a
bump. It
face.
says so. Khloe Kardashian was told by doctors that she needs to have an immediate operation on her face. My God, oh, her ever evolving face. uh, numerous stories, and she put this on her Instagram.
Wow.
Reality TV
Well,
star added that she
yeah.
hoped to encourage others to visit the doctor often when they
Yeah.
notice strange things on their bodies, because
But
this
she's used
tumor,
to that.
you can hardly see it. I
Yeah.
wish I could show you this picture. Simpiwe, can we show the people this picture? She noticed a small bump on her face, which initially she thought it was a zit. She thought it
Oh
was a minor
wow.
zit.
Oh
But
wow.
because, unlike the rest of us, when you have a zit, you kind of just ignore it
Yeah. This is
and don't take
or,
it
or,
to
you
the doctor.
just,
She took her
or
to
you
the
can just
doctor
squeeze it.
only to find that it is a tumor
Yeah.
and that she was very courageous. The doctor said
Yeah.
that she was very courageous to have come forward with this mole, which turned out to be a fungus, a cancerous mole, which was a fungus, they said. And for her, she felt that this was just too much to bear when
Wow.
she got that. It's just too much to bear. That's the first news story of the day, guys. So when you're
There
standing
you
around
go.
the show the
There
pic.
you
This is
go.
the picture of Chloe, but show the picture of her in a little bit later on in the article that they show a picture of her mole that turned out to be a
Wow.
cancerous fungus, guys.
Wow.
Okay, this is an important news story. This is an important
Wow.
news story,
Made it all
which
the
is
way
in
into the
Business
BBC.
Insider today, because
Mm,
as you may know, that there is a strike happening at Transnet at the moment, and this strike is threatening South Africa's 3 billion rand berry export revenue threatened by Transnet strike. I did not know this.
mm.
3 billion rands of berries get exported out
Wow.
of South Africa. And because of the strike, these berry exports are sitting
Yeah.
now at the
Mm,
port and
mm.
unable to be loaded off to be taken away. Rare skin
Yeah.
cancer is one of the most ambiguous forms of cancer, says Conco Chris. Stop it, Chris. Just when you see molds, you have to go and like get it. As many as 30,000 jobs are at risk, with the strike spelling trouble for a third of local producers currently finding themselves unprofitable. The berry industry exports more than 15,000 tons of berries to the EU and the UK during this
Mm,
last season. And now sitting at the docks waiting
mm,
to the strike comes at the season's peak that runs from October to November. And there is many fears that these berries are going to be sitting there and could go off. I wonder what we could do as South Africans
mm,
to help this. The open ended strike has occurred during the peak of the berry export season, which means
mm,
that even a single day of ports not operating will have a significant knock on effect on the entire berry value chain, putting something like 30,000 livelihoods who depend on the industry at risk, as well as millions of rands worth of export revenue.
mm,
In a statement that Berries ZA has put out there, the local harvesting season has started and it's dominated by blueberries. So when you see
mm.
blueberries in your,
Yeah.
I didn't know this, guys. When you see
Yeah.
blueberries in your Woolworths or Pick and Pay, those berries are South African berries, and a lot of them
Mm,
do get exported. And now
mm.
they're sitting at the docks waiting.
Yeah.
Propaganda, who is often very sarcastic here, is saying we should make gin. Can you make gin out of berries? You don't need that many berries to put in a gin and tonic. But I don't know if you can make a berry gin. There's an idea, guys. If you're looking for something to do that diversify, maybe you can think about how we can save all the berries that are sitting at the ports, because the strike is open ended. We don't know when it will end. Um, and it's threatening all of of these berries that are sitting there and about to go off. What else? What else? Police union. Do you want to hear about the police union?
Yeah. Let's talk about the
Concerned
police
about
union.
private.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is an ENCA story.
Hmm.
SA Policing Union concerned about private prisons. Johannesburg. The South African
Mm,
Policing Union is calling on Minister Ronald Lamola to take private prisons back into the Correctional Services Department. The union is concerned by what it calls barbaric and humiliating searches allegedly conducted in the privately run Mangaung G4S Correctional Center in the Free State. I
mm.
didn't know we had private prisons in South Africa.
Yeah. I thought it was
This
in
is
America only.
interesting.
Mm. Yeah.
So there
I,
you
I
go.
know that's the norm in
It's
the
an issue
US.
with
That's how
private
they do it.
prisons and policing, and our police union is worried about this. I would be much more worried about them doing what they have to do every day. If we get that right, guys, then we can take on more. I wish that somebody would say to them, if you just get that right, get the basics of what you have to do right, then we can give you more responsibility. You know, like how your mother says at home, or at least how I say to my son, if you just get the basics right, I'll give you more responsibility. This is an interesting story, and it's probably going to come up later in the Burning Platform. Uh, on the Burning Platform today, guys, we have a very special guest. Mr. Moeletsi Mbeki is joining us, and he's going to chat with us. I know, I'm so excited because he's not afraid to say nothing,
My
and
God,
he's a
my
definite
God.
insider. We don't get to have
Yeah,
a lot of,
yeah,
of like party insiders come and
yeah,
talk to us frankly here on the
yeah,
Burning Platform. Sometimes they
yeah.
come here
Mm,
as happened a couple of weeks ago, and they talk
hmm
to us superficially. They don't want to answer our questions. They just want to tell us what they want to tell us.
mm,
This is a Daily Maverick story. Suspended Chief Magistrate Desmond Nay faces charges over alleged Busasa home security upgrade gratification payments. This is a very interesting story. Desmond Nay appeared briefly in the Pretoria Commercial Crimes Court on Monday, facing charges of corruption. His arrest came after he was warned to appear in court, and hence no application for bail was required. The allegations stem from alleged corrupt dealings Nay had with African Global Operations or Global Technology Systems,
mm.
formerly known as Busasa,
Of
dating back
course.
to September 2016. It is the state's contention that Nair received gratification in the form of an electric fence, an alarm system, parameter
Mm,
beams, and a CCTV system from Operations Global Technology Systems in September 2016 at his Pretoria Silverton home. Shame. He's
mm,
going to go to jail.
mm,
Nair's name appears in the third volume of Judge Raymond Zondo's report on state capture, which lists more than 60 individuals recommended for prosecution by the National Prosecuting Authority.
mm,
Nair was not the only high-profile person to get security upgrades. And this is the interesting part, guys. He wasn't
hmm
the only one, but he is the only one in the dock.
Yeah, yeah. Out of
Maybe the
60.
secret's in the chicken. Maybe Nomvula didn't get uh, called out to court because she also got chicken with her security upgrades. Neither did Gweda Matashe also got security upgrades. Those two are not in the dock, but those two do appear on lists to become like NEC members or even part of the top six. So
Mm.
that is the story. How many stories have we done? One more? Three? One more? Do you want one more story? So did you want one more news
One,
story?
one, one
Hella,
more
when
news
you're at the
story.
cooler, the thing about
Yeah,
the stories, right?
yeah,
Talking
yeah.
about the life that we're living in the past and the present. These are the
Yes,
stories that in your present, when you're at the office, at the water cooler, or getting
yes,
coffee, you can talk to
yes.
people because we keep
Yeah,
you informed here at Cliff Central. You can
yeah,
talk to people about
yeah,
some of these
yeah,
things, and you can just gloss
yeah.
over the top stuff and be like,
These are the
so
stories that
super
keep
informative.
evolution turning. Yeah,
Yeah, and you
yeah.
can have your
Ah,
like own TED talk. You can be like, this is your
yes,
own TED,
yes,
right?
yes,
Talking about
yes.
anthropology and
Yeah.
talking about Busasa chicken and who gets
There
to
you
go to
go.
jail and who doesn't.
There you
One more
go.
story. The story about royals, because we haven't had enough about of those in the past couple of weeks. This is it would seem that we're finally going to have sure it would seem that we're finally going to have a coronation for the Zulu king, and his uncle is coming, King Muswati, to attend Zulu king's coronation in Durban despite threats of protests against him. As you know, that King Muswati, the under fire Muswati monarch, the Eswatini kingdom, King Muswati III, has confirmed that he is going to attend the coronation of Zulu King Misuzulu Ncubile kaZwelithini, even though his presence may spark protest. The two kings are blood relatives, and the coronation ceremony will take place at Durban's Moses Mabhida Stadium on October 29.
Mm,
Ooh, sparks are going to
mm,
fly. So not
mm,
only is that because it is still in contention,
mm,
his brother is still saying that he is
mm,
the rightful king, But
Mm,
there is going to be a coronation at Moses Mabhida Stadium. So you guys better stay tuned. And King Muswati, who is his uncle, will be coming to that. He is
mm,
the King Misuzulu's mother's what? Mother's brother. Yes.
mm.
So he's
Yeah,
his
I think
uncle.
so.
Uh, and both Muswati and King Manthombi are the offspring of the late King Sopuza of Eswatini, who died in 1982.
Hmm.
On Tuesday, King Misuzulu paid a courtesy visit to King Muswati at Lutzizini Royal. Oh, I hope I said that right. Royal Palace, just outside the capital, Mbabane. So uh,
There you go.
keep watching because it looks like there's going to be more than just a
Yeah,
coronation. It's not going to be just like, it's going to be also drama and
yeah,
tension
yeah.
coming
But they
up at
say,
Moses Mabhida
yeah,
Stadium.
you're not quite king if no one is
I think those are
contesting
enough news
your
stories.
kingship. Yeah,
Oh, Tati, can I hear you?
yeah. No, I
I
was
can't hear
saying that
Tati.
you can't hear me. I can
No, I
hear
can't
you.
hear you
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
Simply, I can't hear Tati anymore, and I wonder if the people can hear you.
I can hear.
Can we hear him? Yeah.
Yeah, 1 2 1 2. Testing.
No, these are the headlines. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Congo Chris, that these headlines are not as exciting. They're lowball headlines. Okay, they can hear him. I'm the only one that can't hear him.
Wow.
I'm the only person that can't hear him. I'm sorry that you think there's a softball headlines, Congo Chris, but these are the headlines. We've got to have variety. This is what we have today. No, Tati, say something to me.
No, can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Now I can hear you.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you think of that?
Well, I was saying that they say you're not quite king if no one is contesting, your coronation. If everybody's like, he's the king, let him happen, then it's not quite, you're not quite the real thing. Somebody has to, you have to rise above the others. You have to be fighting for it. You have to win it, you know. And look, I don't know much, but you know, uh, this
Back
this
in the day,
this
you
whole
actually
drama
had
that's
to
playing
fight.
out, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Back in the day, you
look,
actually had to fight whole like
yeah,
tribes of people to become the
yeah,
king.
yeah. So
So
you have
this
to create
is
some sort of contestation for this thing to be seen as something worth having, you know.
what's in the news that is currently like got your bone or your bone or your panties in a knot. Is there
Yeah.
anything that's in the news that kind of gets your blood boiling or excited? Or
Yeah.
are you only excited about it?
No, 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 no. I'm excited about all. I have things that worry me, and it's the what's happening in Ukraine and in Europe, um, and in Washington.
Which
All those
one thing?
connections. Jesus,
Which
wow,
one thing of
yeah,
all the
yeah.
many
For me,
things?
for me,
You're
and
like things of
they've
worry.
come to talk about war like it's an option. Like weird.
Mm.
I mean, I was listening to a pod to a webinar. What happened to webinars? But yesterday, and they're talking about the tone of the discussion now is that we are in war times, and this is like happening in the U.S. at a very high level. They when they correct themselves and say, guys, just remember we are in war times, and this is Americans talking about their relationship with Russia, their relationship with Europe. They define it as wartime relationships. So
Mm.
what they're saying is that let's put all the rules away and understand that we have to use different rules now because this is wartime. That's what they're saying. I
But
mean, I
we
think
have
that's
been in
crazy.
but we have been in wartime really for the longest time. I'm just thinking we're talking about this in the office that it is so Ukraine started in March this year and so that's a very short amount of time if you
Yeah.
consider that America was in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Mm.
And the tone of conversation, and I wonder how much of this also is about who is at war with whom and what the
mm,
power dynamic and the power dynamic of Russia and the US. And now they've included China in that conversation.
mm,
Makes it, even when I was younger, talking in history about world war. And I'm like, really, it
mm.
was more of like a European war that they just
Yeah,
like got the rest of us involved in. It
yeah.
wasn't everybody at war.
Come, you'll get a bicycle at the end of it.
And a pair
Mm,
of boots. And
yeah.
I'm wondering how, also just in the tone of conversation that's being had because of who the players are. When it was just America and Afghanistan, it was
Mm,
happening over there. And that
mm,
involved quite a lot of people, and it,
mm,
it had an
mm,
impact on a lot of people's lives. And it had an impact, not so much of an impact economically reverberating around the world, the way
mm,
that the Ukraine and the fish oil has
mm,
done here in
mm.
South Africa. But you say that we have been in wartime for a long time. We've actually not had peacetime
Yeah.
much longer than we have had war.
But the conflict you're talking about was they had a feeling it was we had a feeling that it was America's war and maybe with America's allies and people in Afghanistan or the Al Qaeda or the Taliban. It was always this one feels like everyone is involved and you're being asked to choose sides. I mean, the Europeans and now the Americans, they've been here to visit Cyril and they have asked him to choose sides. That's literally what they've asked him to do. And and he's traveling the world right now, busy figuring out which side to choose, I guess. I don't know. But that's what they're asking us to do. Choose sides. For what? In preparation for what? Can't we all just get along and be friends and live happily ever after
Conversation
in
that's going to be
peace?
happening at Buckingham
Yeah.
Palace with King Charles is going to be about,
Hey.
so, dude, what side you on?
Yeah.
But it's also quite
Yeah.
coercive, right? The side that
It is.
you're choosing, kind of like, "Hmm, what side are you on? Be on this
Yeah.
side."
Yeah.
And how people are choosing the sides that they're choosing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we are particularly torn because, I mean, we have this wonderful colonial history that brings all sorts of ties with it. And then on the other hand, we have this wonderful struggle history that brings all sorts of ties with it. And we have this heritage, and, for better or for worse. And it's like, we have to choose. And it's not nice. I can imagine. It's not nice.
Shame, man. Imagine having to choose a side. And I agree with you, Carl. Imagine being Cyril having to choose a side in the world. And he can't even choose which side he's on here at home. The man's got his own battles. Man's got his own battles, people drawing him into their shit. And what's your view? What is your view
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
who to choose? Should we choose?
Wow.
Should we be choosing?
South Africa's position at the United Nations, and I think this is the correct position, and big ups to Naledi Pandor because she's leading that discussion, is let's negotiate. Let's resolve this thing at the negotiation table. And the powers that be, the superpowers, especially on the one side of the planet, are saying no. Let's fight. I mean, that's really what they're saying. I mean, what else? Well, to be fair, let's say both sides. Okay, let's say both sides. South Africa's position is let's negotiate this thing out. What is so wrong with talking it out, resolving it, keeping the peace? Let's make
Mm.
that the urgent thing. And right now, it doesn't seem like any side is interested in negotiating. It's crazy. It's
they
crazy. Even
they definitely
the democracies of this world, right? They are not in a rush to go to the negotiating table.
these are the democracies of this world. But war is also, we spoke a little bit earlier about economies. War is also a business. So maybe the reason why we have not had peace in so long is because many people are getting very rich
Mm,
off of the fighting, on both sides.
Yeah, war can be profitable.
War is profitable. There is no
War
war can
fixes
be profitable.
economies.
War is profitable. I don't know,
War
I
fixes
think when you are
economies. Yeah.
when you're in America right now, though, they
Yeah.
have been at war for so
Mm,
long
mm,
that I think that it has become a drain on their economy more than fixing
mm,
their economy.
mm,
There are young
mm.
people in America who've never known America to not be at war,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they have
Yeah.
serious economic pressures in their
Mm,
country right
mm, mm. And somehow the world economy needs to be stimulated one way or another. And I guess people are looking for ideas. I'm not saying this is why there's this global conflict, but there's every possibility that some people will tolerate it because it will bring in a lot of money for a whole lot of people and stimulate, global economy. And there are people who are better qualified to speak on this, but I just get upset at the fact that there does not seem to be urgency, you know, in finding a way to resolve this conflict. And I can sit here from far away, from Ukraine, and say that I know, and watch it on TV and see people bombing each other. Um, but we follow the discussion. We listen to even the people around the center, and they're not talking about resolving this thing with talks and negotiations. They're not doing that. They seem to be interested in seeing it happen, resolving itself with one side losing. And I don't think that's cool. I think that's totally, if I may use the French, may I use the French? I think it's
now.
totally fucked up. It's not
I
cool.
I
We
thought
have
that was
children,
I thought that was an advocate defaultism. It's actually French? Wow.
It's totally French.
No, I do think that it's fucked up, and I think we've
Yeah.
come full circle, right? In that we started out talking about life beginning here in Africa and being the library of the history of humanity. I do
Mm,
think that probably and possibly if people were interested in finding a resolve, the resolve is in looking back and in looking at what we've gotten right in the past and what we've gotten absolutely wrong. And maybe that's where the answers are to how we resolve our future.
yeah, yeah. We've got to learn from my experiences, and experiences go back a long, long way. And the more recent one is, the activities of 1945, going back to 1940, 41 actually, um, and many, many lives, too many lives were lost. And that war ended with two atomic bombs. We know what that looks like. We know what happens if you throw those things around. It's not a mystery anymore. It's not a
And
pretty
very
picture.
glibly, and
Yeah,
and very glibly, Mr.
yeah,
Putin, like standing there with his finger on the,
yeah,
just don't test me, don't test me. He's standing with his finger hovering on the button, and nobody.
yeah, yeah. Let me just say this quickly, Phumi, if I may. All the civilizations in history, or at least the epochs and the eras and so on and so forth, ended with mass extinctions. And we are currently in the sixth mass extinction. Animals
Event.
are dying. Yeah, all sorts of things. Species are dying. We could also die. And at the rate that we're going, that needle is drawing closer and closer and closer. For as long as this rhetoric is continuing and rising as it is, the current mass extinction might come sooner than we want. Mr. Putin, Mr. Biden, and Mr. Europeans, Mrs. Europeans, all of you, I hope you're listening. But they're pushing this thing closer and closer to the end, and it's not cool.
It's definitely a mister because, like, the missus would have found a way. I'm like, nobody
Yes.
gets it. If it was a mom, if it was a mom in charge of these negotiations, this shit
Yeah.
would be over by now.
I wish Angela Merkel was there. I wish Angela Merkel was there because for me, she's just she was the epitome of leadership and what female leadership does, what a woman in power can do with that power. She was just the most beautiful leader that I've seen in a long time. I don't think that the current crop, can hold a candle to her.
Mm, I agree. I think I agree. And one of the things that she also that we could learn a lot from is she kept a coalition government.
Mm. Yeah,
She kept it
yeah,
together for
yeah,
many,
for
many years. We could
years, for
learn from that.
years. Yeah,
We could learn
absolutely.
from that.
Yeah.
So I do have to, it's 2 minutes to 7, and I do have to do, we've got a dun, 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 dun. They trusted me with a live read
Oh.
just to test how well my reading is. And because we're talking about, and I'm wondering if there are definitely places you could go to get away from a lot of stuff. There are places that one could go to get away from the heat wave in Joburg. There are places one could go to get away from the the mess that is the world. And one of the places that I think about that I would love to find myself in, kind of trying to hide from the rest of the world, is the Mediterranean. And this is cool because it's about Malta. Do you know about Malta? Do you know where Malta is?
Yeah,
Kind
it's
of.
a little place just off the
Tiny
coast
little
of
place.
Italy, I think, more or less, somewhere there. Yeah.
It's set in the Mediterranean, just
Yeah.
south of Italy. The
Mhm.
275 square meter island offers a very popular EU residence program that many South Africans have been taking up. Frank Salt Real Estate, a Maltese family run business with 50 years of experience, is hosting seminars next week in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town, where they will be showcasing the various EU residency programs available to South Africans and also showcasing some of the island's best property investment options. So if you've got a little bit of money and a little bit of time, you could run away to Malta. Attendance to the seminar, but it's free to be at the seminar, but one needs to register beforehand at www.maltaresidency.com, malta-residency.com. You can also ask for a private meeting with the experts. What does Malta offer? What makes Malta popular for EU residents? Easy application process, very safe country to live in. It's only 275 square meters. English speaking, warm climate, beautiful beaches, excellent quality of life, education and health services, and one of the fastest growing economies in Europe. Practically no unemployment and a very stable government. Hey, it sounds like a place to run away to for more than just a week. The free attendance seminars will take place at the Wanderers Club in Johannesburg on the 14th of October. That's this Friday. That's tomorrow. At the Oyster Box in Durban on the 17th, and at the Mount Nelson in Cape Town on the 19th of October. The seminars start at 5 p.m. Frank Salt is no novice in South Africa. In fact, they have been organizing similar seminars for the last 20 years. They have the right experience to help with the whole process, from guiding you on which residence program is best suited, finding the right property to buy, invest, or rent, as well as help with all your relocation requirements. To register for the seminars, all you need to do is visit www.malta-residency.com. As easy as that. And so there you have it. If you're looking to get away for more than just a week, if you've got a little bit of money to buy a place to live in, Malta might be the place for you. And if you're in Joburg, you can go check it out tomorrow, the 15th. No, the 14th. Hey guys, how could I forget? Tomorrow is the 14th. It's my son's birthday. On the 17th, next week in Durban at the Oyster Box. This is the kind of living that you're like signing up to. Oyster Box, Wanderers Club, Mount Nelson. There you
Malta.
have
There
it.
you go.
Malta, EU residency in Malta.
Whew.
Ithateng Mokgoro, curator
Emma.
of TedX
Yeah.
Johannesburg. This has
Mhm.
been a scintillating conversation. Thank you for getting up so early to come and chat with us. And so this is your 30-second ad break. You come from advertising, you know how to do a 30-second ad break. 30-second ad break about TedX Johannesburg. How can people come to the event? Is it a hybrid event? Where do they sign up?
Yeah. Firstly, where do we come from? Why are we here? How can we preserve our planet for generations to come? Yeah, these are the big questions that we're asking. And we've got some of the best possible people coming from, many of them from around the world, who could possibly answer this question, people that we would want to learn from. And to attend the event, visit our website, tedxjohannesburg.com. Look for the little button that takes you to the page, or you can go to quicket.com and search for TEDx Johannesburg. The event is on Thursday, the 27th of October. It's from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock, or 9:30 to 2:30. It's at the Forum in Bryanston. So all you need is one morning, and you can travel far into the past and deep into the future, along with the best possible people who could take that journey with you. The tickets are from 400 rands for students all the way to 800 rands for standard tickets, and 500 rands for NGOs. It's an investment well worth making for anyone who wants to do a little bit of personal development, broaden their understanding, connect with everybody else who's thinking about our place in the world, our place in the universe. TEDx Johannesburg, life, past, present, future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And after this, it is the burning platform with Mr. Moeletsi Mbeki. Stay connected. Thank you, Tati.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. It's been fantastic hanging out.
Up next in the Auto Trader podcast.
It's more the maintenance of the car that is a cost of ownership rather than the actual maintenance plan. The maintenance plan is really just trying to peg that number.
Yeah.
Rather than it biting you know.
Great.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Dr.
Morning,
Moeletsi,
ma'am. Yes,
thank you so
oh,
much for waking me to
it's
be
a
with us.
pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
You know, very seldom do we have a guest on our show who does not need an introduction. And I the mind of Mr. Moeletsi Mbeki is definitely what, and the voice of Mr. Moeletsi Mbeki is one that in the political discourse of our country, a very important one, with a lot of in-depth knowledge. And this morning, I am extremely delighted to be able to chat with you. And what a morning! We have this show on Thursdays because it gives us the chance to see what is happening in the political realm of our country all week. And then it's just before the weekend so we can download everything. And when we go into the weekend, hopefully we can forget.
Well,
And
good
what a week
plan.
it has been. What a week it has been, Dadimbeki. Starting on Monday outside the Pietermaritzburg Magistrates Court with a, a newly free Mr. Jacob Zuma, who, for the first time in a long time, what I saw is a very jovial Jacob Zuma, once again on stage singing and dancing, feeling quite elated and happy with himself. Just coming out of the magistrate's court with a private prosecution case that he's got against Karen Moore, the journalist, and Mr. Billy Downer, the advocate. What do you make of what we are watching with this case?
Well, I haven't really been following very closely what's going on, and there seems to be a lot of technical arguments by the lawyers as to Billy Downer's role in this long saga. So I'm afraid I'm not the expert to explain to you the technicalities of the legal arguments that are being made. I think it's interesting, of course, that somebody who is accused is accusing the accuser, because Billy Downer is the accuser as the prosecutor in the arms deal case against former President Zuma. So it's a lot of drama. If I were Shakespeare, I would be preparing to write a play about it. It's a funny story.
I'm happy not to talk about the intricacies of the case itself, but more importantly about the meaning of what is unfolding and what implications it has for not just the case, but for the party, the ANC, having this long and protracted battle playing out in the public sphere and leading up into the December elective conference. What does this mean, in your opinion, for South Africa and for the ANC watching this unfold?
Well, this is one part of the unfolding saga of the arms deal that was the arms procurement that the ANC government started in the late 1990s, early 2000. This procurement has been fraught with all sorts of controversies, accusations about corruption, about backhanders, about inappropriate ways of the government procuring services, goods and services. So this has been an ongoing story for many years. We had accusations by Patricia de Lille, who interestingly is now part of the same ANC government that she was accusing. You had another man who is now living in England, I'm trying to remember his name now, who even wrote a book about this arms deal. So the question of military procurements by the ANC government has been very, very fraught, and this is only one part of the controversies around it. Of course, there was Shabir Sheikh, who was also implicated and was sentenced and then paroled.
Also
so yeah,
medical parole.
it's a big story. It's a big story. Yeah.
It is a big story. And, you remind us that actually there are so many cases ongoing with Jacob Zuma, and all of them in varying stages of unfolding in court. And for many South Africans, Jacob Zuma is looming large in the minds of South Africans as the beginning of all the problems we have today. But you're telling us that this problem is actually much longer,
No,
and we have forgotten about it?
yeah, well, I am one of those people who don't believe in angels and demons. So I don't think Jacob Zuma is either an angel or a demon. Our problems in South Africa, we have huge systemic problems, some as old as 400 years. So I'm not one of those who think that South Africa's problems are caused by Jacob Zuma. Of course, there are those who think they are, but I'm not one of them.
And how do we resolve these problems going into the future? Because, we're not going to be able to unravel what's happened in the past. In your view, how going into the future can we change the outcomes of what our future looks like?
Well, first we have to come up with a list of priorities of what are the problems that we are trying to solve, and what is the list of priorities in which we're going to solve those problems. Every country has a myriad of problems, but you have to decide which is the most important problem that you're going to start with, which is the second, which is the third, and then you put your resources and all your strength to solving those three problems. So to me, that's one of the challenges we face within South Africa is we think we have all the problems under the sun and we are going to solve them all in one day. And of course, we don't solve any, because if you don't prioritize, you will never be able to solve any of the problems. So we have to try and get to a consensus as to what is the priority problem that we must focus on, and then what are the tools that we have that will help us to solve that problem, who has the tools, and then persuade whoever has the tools to focus on using those tools to solve the priority problem. So that's how I would approach our problem.
With your experience and your views, and having had the time to kind of decipher all of if you were to say the top 3 problems that South Africa and South Africans should be spending all of their best brain power and resource in trying to solve, what would those be?
Well, one of our biggest problems, which we never talk about, is that 27% of our children under the age of 5 are stunted, which means they have been malnourished from when they were still in the womb of their mother. And their brains are not growing in the way in which they should grow. Their bodies are not growing in the way in which they should grow, which means that when they become adults, their intellectual power is below average. So for me, That is a primary problem of South Africa. Why do we have this situation? And how do we tackle it so that every child born in South Africa has the same brain capability as any other child born anywhere in the world? That to me is the priority. People think it's electricity. Of course, you may have your priorities that, ESCOM is one and road accidents, crime, etc. Fine. But for me, the fact that a quarter of the children in South Africa under 5 are stunted means that when they grow up into adults, we have a quarter of our adult population that does not have the brain power to be able to look after itself properly and to be able to build the country. And that is what we have to address so that the situation doesn't continue.
Do you think we have the tools to do that?
Well, we have all the tools, but we don't have the will. We have all the tools. After all, at the bottom of it is a nutrition problem. Why is the mother, when she's pregnant, why is she not eating a balanced diet? That is where the thing is starting. And then the child, after she or he is born, is not having a proper meal, and so on, so that then they don't grow properly, they don't achieve the average height, they don't achieve the average brain power.
So what I hear you say when you say we don't have the will is that we have a vacuum in the people that are supposed to be making the right decisions. In how, in the will, it then is about a leadership problem. Do you think we have a leadership problem in this country?
I don't think it's a leadership problem. I think they don't care. I
They
think
don't care.
they don't care. No, they don't think having a quarter of our children stunted, they don't think it matters. They don't care. It's not a leadership problem. It's just they don't care about it. It's not their children.
And how can we fix that? If they don't care, how do we fix that?
Well, there are many ways of first, who is it who has to care about our children, a quarter of our children being stunted? It's somebody who thinks the country has to have a future, who thinks the population of South Africa has to have a future. If you don't care about the future of the people of South Africa, then obviously you don't care about it. Because if they don't have a future, because they don't have the same brain development that the Americans have, or the Chinese, or the Zimbabweans, then you don't care. And so the question is, who should care? Who do we as a society think should care?
So I think, definitely when you bring that issue of stunted children, it's definitely not something I have thought about when I think of all of the things that are problems in South Africa. And it's definitely an interesting perspective on where our problems stem. And I wonder then if the leadership, or who should care, the answer to the who should care and see about the future of South Africa, if this is not rooted in a past that we have not really addressed and redressed. Do you think that one of the things that have brought us to this place where people don't care, where the individuals who should be making the decisions about caring don't make those decisions, do you think they were affected by stunting in their childhood? Are we here because decisions were made by a previous government and the adults we have today are also stunted?
Wow. Well, I wouldn't say so. What I would say is that if we look at South Africa over the last, let's start with the discovery of the diamonds in 1867. The people who have ruled South Africa, what they have cared about is getting the minerals out of the ground at whatever cost to the lives of the people who dig these minerals out of the ground. That's what has been happening in South Africa. Now, 1867 is a long time ago. It's a century and a half. So when the people who control the country, their priority is to get the minerals out of the ground, they don't care about the children of the workers who are getting the minerals out of the ground. Where are their children? They never ask themselves. When Cecil Rhodes was digging diamonds in Kimberley and making the big hole in Kimberley, do you think he ever asked himself, where are the wives and the children of these workers who are digging, of these people who are digging the diamonds? Where are the people, where are the wives, and where are the children of the people who are digging the gold in Springs, in Randfontein? You know, we talk about, for example, the Zamazamas. Has anybody asked themselves, who are these people? Why are they doing what they are doing? Where are their families? Nobody. All we are saying is bring out the army, kill them, shoot them, kill them.
You know, I love that about Cecil John Rhodes, because I would never have presumed to think that Cecil John Rhodes would ask himself that about people who are not like him. But we have a government today that looks like us, that presumably comes from the same experiences that we come from, and they don't think that. They don't care either. And this, for me, says that we now have a government that looks like us, that presents itself to be a government that cares about the people of South Africa. In fact, their favorite thing that they say, almost every one of the leaders, you hear them say that our people, this and that. And yet their behavior does not match that talk. Is it perhaps time for us to change this government? What do you think about that?
Well, it's very clear to me that this government does not care. They collect the statistics, by the way. I didn't. The statistics of the stunted children doesn't come from me. It comes from the South African government. So they know that that's what is happening in the country. But they don't care about it. Or if they choose not to do anything about it, because it continues. And then you can move on and look at this. One day I was driving in the Drakensberg somewhere, and it was early in the morning, and there were the children of the farm workers who were walking for miles or kilometers out in the Drakensberg in the cold, going to some farm school. Where are the school buses? It shows we have a government that doesn't care about these children. Maybe half of those children are themselves stunted, but nobody cares. They don't care. So now, what do we do about, okay, you're suggesting we vote them out? Well, maybe that's what we should do. But then we have to have somebody who will care, because it's no use replacing. Remember, we had a government before 94 that didn't care, and we have the government for 30 years that also doesn't care. So now, what kind of a government do we need that will care? I think we can't keep voting for somebody who says, oh, I'll solve your problems, and then 30 years later, problem is not solved, and then we think, oh,
the problem has become worse.
the problem has become worse. Then we say, oh, let's look for another Messiah who's going to save us. So we have to think deeper ourselves as citizens about how do we solve the problem. As I say, we have to identify. That's only for me. I think that is a priority problem for South Africa, that we have a quarter of our children stunted. But maybe for somebody else, they think they have a different perspective.
Dr. Mbeki, so you say we're not going to have a Messiah that's going to come and save us from ourselves as South Africans, but we really only have what we have in front of us. And the conversation that's been happening over the past couple of weeks for a lot of the opposition parties has been that maybe they need to band together to create an opportunity to throw out a government that hasn't cared for us for the past 30 years. Do you believe that the answer lies in coalitions?
Well, it's the only answer we have, because we have one giant party in South Africa, which is the ANC, which has the last election, the last national election, the ANC had 57% of the vote. And then we have a myriad of parties. I don't know, I think there's 13 of them in parliament who between themselves have the balance, have the 43% of the vote. So if they have a better solution for South Africa's problems than the ANC has, then let them get together, because individually they can't defeat the ANC. It's very clear they don't have the numbers. So, and we are a democracy, and I'm afraid democracy operates with numbers. So then they have to get together and form a coalition, and then come tell the voter what is their solution to the problem of stunting of our children in this country.
So, one of the things that South Africa is very good at is looking at our past and kind of reading today based on the pain of the past. And on the one side, the racial divisions of South Africa are with us every day. And the one thing that a lot of people look at is they say the ANC is the black party. And because I'm black, I'm going to vote in this direction. The DA is the white party. And I cannot vote for a white party. And every kind of iteration in between is it may be that South Africans as a whole, we are stunted from the past and are failing to see the opportunity that lies ahead of us.
I think, I think we as a nation, obviously, we lost a lot of education time, if I can put it that way, during the I don't know, the 100 years of apartheid. We lost a lot of, we got closed off from the world, so that we were not moving forward with the rest of the world. For example, if you look at let me give the issue of women's liberation. I went to exile in the United Kingdom. I was there from 1965. And one of the hottest movements at that time was the women's liberation movement. But South Africa was closed. When I got there, I was coming from South Africa. But I get there and there is this movement which I knew nothing about. And all the discussions and the debates and what have you that were going on at the time, South Africa was not part of that discussion. So that is one of the things we have to realize is we have to make up for lost time, which we lost during the time when South Africa was closed. South Africa was closed by the National Party regime from the mid-1950s onwards. They started banning books, they started doing all. So as you say the ANC is a black party and the DA is a white party. that is a reflection of how little we understand our own society.
Can the
The ANC is not a black party. The DA is not a white party. Okay, let's go.
But so the reason why it seems that way from the outside is because when we look at the lists, for instance, coming out of the various people that are possibly going to be the new leadership of the ANC coming out of December, it is not a reflection of a multi racial, diverse party. Is there leadership within the ANC that can reflect a diverse South Africa so that we don't think of them as a black party? And I ask you about the ANC and not the DA because I know you have closer ties with the ANC.
No, I study all parties in South Africa.
Okay, so then let's talk about the DA too, who over the past couple of years have had many utterances and have lost lots of the individuals who were the representation of their multi-party and diversity. So what you end up seeing is these faces that are very skewed towards one race.
You see, that's the point. The point is that what we see and what the broader reality is, we have to dig deeper so that we get a deeper understanding. If we, and I agree with you, many people think, many Africans, let me put it that way, think the DA is a white party. But actually the DA, in the last general election, if I'm not mistaken, got 22% of the vote, right? Now, if the DA were a white party, the white population of South Africa is only 8% of the population of South Africa. So how do you get 22% of the vote from only 8% of the population? It shows that actually we are not digging deeper to understand who is voting for the DA. And just a closer look will tell you that the biggest single vote of the DA is the colored voters. It's not the whites, it's the colors. So then you have to ask yourself, why are the colors voting for the DA? Another big group, of course, are the whites, but the whites are split between the Afrikaans-speaking and the English-speaking. And we saw the Afrikaans-speaking leaving the DA, going to FF+. So although the white population is 8%, it's already split itself between two parties at least. And of course, I'm sure there are other whites in other parties. Action SA has white members and whatever. And so does the ANC. So you can see is that what we should be doing in South Africa is we should spend time to try and understand. To say the DA is a white party when actually the biggest voter for the DA is the colored population. It means we are not understanding our country and we are not understanding our problem.
Do you think there is still space within the ruling party for a person like a Joe Slovo?
Well, you see, what the ANC did, I think it was 2003, it passed a law called Black Economic Empowerment Act. Now, before 2003, the ANC was actually a multiracial party, as you were saying, that your Joe Slovos were there, and your Yusuf Dadus and whatever. But somebody sold the ANC the message, or it sold itself the message that, oh, now that we are in power, we must be a black party. But when they were fighting against apartheid, the ANC was an alliance of everybody in South Africa. Ruth First was killed by the regime. She was white. She was a member of the ANC, and she had been fighting with the ANC for all these years. Suddenly, the ANC has a program of Black economic empowerment. I was shocked because I grew up in an ANC that was a multiracial ANC. And at my home in the Eastern Cape, one of the first photographs I remember on the wall was of Mahatma Gandhi, who was Indian, who was a freedom fighter in South Africa before he became a freedom fighter in India. So, and we had all, so why did the ANC in 2003 suddenly decide that it is going to have a policy that favors blacks only? That is the question we then have to ask ourselves. But of course, if the ANC is going to favor blacks only, and I am white or colored or Indian, then you are telling me it's not a party for me. But the stunted children that I'm talking about, the great majority of them are African black children. So the ANC is not favoring. It's wrong to think it favors black people. It is favoring the black middle class because they are the ones who are benefiting from BEE. So again, as I was pointing out with the DA, one has to dig deeper to start to understand that what exactly is going on here. And we South Africans, we lose patience. We lose patience with these studies because we think, oh, so many studies.
What do you mean by that? That we lose patience with them?
Well, I suppose we have all these commissions of inquiries who are investigating this, that, and the other, and then nothing changes. So then the people get discouraged. But actually, we shouldn't get discouraged. We should study what the Zondo Commission says. Okay, it takes a lot of time to do so, and then get to understand what's going on in the country. We should study what the researchers at our universities are producing, explaining what our problems are, so that we get a clearer understanding.
And in your view, as an ordinary South African, what is it that I can do to change the situation that we are in? There must be, there are big things that we can do, and voting is one of them. And there are little things that we can do on a day-to-day basis in our own lives. What is it that more South Africans should be doing more of that can change the situation?
Well, the first thing that we should be doing is we should be voting. What we are seeing today in South Africa is that the majority of South Africans over the age of 18 are not voting. So that is one of the things that we should be doing is we should be voting. Secondly, we should be participating in the politics of the country, whether through the media or through whatever channel is open to us. We need to participate. Instead of saying, I don't want to hear anything about politics, I'm sick and tired of politicians, but the politicians shape the future of the country. So there are lots of things. If you are a student, well, I mean, one of the most important groups in any society, but especially in South African society, are the students, especially the high school students. What is it that changed South Africa's direction in the 1970s? There were two groups that changed South Africa's direction. One were the strikes by the workers in the textile and so on industries in Durban in the 70s. And the other one was the uprising by the students rejecting Afrikaans, by the high school students. Okay, they got joined by university students, but the high school students were the ones. So you can see that our young population, especially the high school students, we have to encourage them to have, for example, societies, economic society, political societies, whatever societies, uh, but they have to participate in shaping the future of the country.
Mm. You know, I mean, you talk about how South Africans get frustrated and how easily we get distracted. I think a lot of it is also pain for South Africans because it is a painful experience to have waited this long to be included. It is a painful experience to have waited this long to have a government that looks like you and then find that they don't care. And I'd like to know many sacrifices were made to get us here, and you and your family in no small part. You especially did not get to see your father for many, many years. I think 30 years or so that you did not get to see your father. That is the sacrifice that was made by your family. How do you feel when you see where we are as a country after all that sacrifice?
Well, I think we should sacrifice some more to get to where we want to go to. You said the world, the first thing we have to realize is that South Africa is our country. 1,000 years from now, it will still be our country. So we have to stop thinking that South Africa is somebody else's country. It's our country, us, the South African citizens. So if we're unhappy about how things are going, we have to change them ourselves. So yes, I'm shocked by the way first the ANC accepted the policy of Black economic empowerment, because that's not what we were fighting for. We were fighting for equality amongst all races in South Africa. So then I suddenly see they are passing a law. I'm not in parliament. They were passing a law called Black Economic Empowerment Act. Now, the ANC has never, that's why we had a fight within the ANC with the Africanists who broke away to form the PAC. Is because the PAC wanted a purely African party, but the rest of us who were in the ANC said, no, South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And so the ANC has to also have the same. So, but I'm not discouraged. We have to keep fighting, until we get the South Africa that we want. The ANC is not the end of history. It's, in a way, we mistake ourselves and we think that the ANC is the be all and the end all. Well, it isn't. Tomorrow there will be another party or other parties. There are already other parties, and there are new parties being formed. I saw the other day Musi Maimane. He thought he was going to stand as an individual. Now he's forming a party. So we have a long road to travel until we get South Africa to where we want it to be, we, the citizens of South Africa. So we shouldn't get despondent. We have to keep going.
So there is a long road ahead of us, and we have to be able to see ourselves in a future without an ANC going forward, because they have shown us they don't care.
Absolutely. I lived in Zambia. I worked for the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa for a year in the mid-'80s. Their head office is in Zambia. At the time, the ruling party in Zambia was called the United National Independence Party, UNIP, which had been in power since independence in 1964. UNIP today is nowhere. It's gone. That was President Kaunda's party.
Mm.
But when I lived in Zambia, everything was UNIP. In the same way that today, everything is ANC.
Mm.
UNIP today, I don't know, the last I heard, they had one member of parliament who was the late President Kaunda's
I think
son.
they don't have any representation anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But this was the Liberation Party for Zambia. When I first went to Zambia, in 1965. In fact, I couldn't buy a bus ticket. This was one of the interesting stories about our lives in exile. So I had to take a bus from a town called Broken Hill to Dar es Salaam. So the bus, we had to get into the bus at 2 in the morning, and so I went to buy a bus ticket, and there were these 2 youth league members of UNIP who told me I have to show them my party membership. So of UNIP. So I said, look, I'm a South African. I'm not a Zambian. So they told me, is this a South African bus? So I said, no, it's a Zambian bus. So they said, to get into the Zambian bus, you have to join the party. So before I could buy the ticket, I had to join UNIP. So I became a member of UNIP. So my party UNIP is now disappeared.
And your other party is going the same way.
Yes, I had to join another party, by the way. When I got to the Tanzania side of the border, you had to change buses. Right? So when I got to Tanzania, there were another bunch of youth leagues, this time for Nyerere's party.
Wow.
And they reminded me that to get my bus ticket, I had to first join the party. So I joined that party. It's still there, but the second party, Tanzania. But I'm not sure quite how democratic Tanzania is. But anyway, Zambia, my party in Zambia is gone, all gone.
Well, that is a fascinating story of traveling across the continent, which raises in my mind, as we watch more and more South African politicians fall into this anti-African spiel that is taking up root in this country. What do you make of that? And how do you feel when you hear ANC leaders in senior positions have this huge anti-African stance and the blaming of other nationals on the problems that they have created?
I'm shocked. Really, I find it shocking, and I disagree with them. If we take the challenge of Zimbabwe, we have Mugabe destroyed the economy of Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF and Mugabe, they destroyed the economy of Zimbabwe once the people of Zimbabwe started supporting the opposition party, which was the Movement for Democratic Change. So they brought out the army, they disenfranchised farm workers in particular by occupying the farms and evicting the farm workers, because the farm workers in Zimbabwe were voting for the opposition party because many of them were members of the trade union which had set up the opposition party. We, the South African government, instead of criticizing ZANU for doing this, we gave all sorts of excuses for them. The consequence is that the poor people in Zimbabwe who were being victimized by ZANU had to run to the neighboring countries, especially to Botswana and South Africa. Now, the South African government is deporting them back to Zimbabwe, but the Zimbabwe economy has collapsed. So now, what is this all about? They helped ZANU-PF destroy the economy of Zimbabwe, which forced these poor people to have to run to South Africa. But they should have stopped ZANU from destroying the economy. They should have, because we knew what would happen. They should have said, no, you can't destroy your country's economy because then you're creating a problem for our economy. Instead, they turned a blind eye to and said, "Oh, form a government of national unity, do this, that, and the other." You know the story of what was called quiet
Quiet
diplomacy.
diplomacy.
Yes, quiet diplomacy. Now, Minister Moeletsi is going to deport all these people to Zimbabwe. But what are they going to do when they get to Zimbabwe? The economy of Zimbabwe has been destroyed. So but because of operation of this crazy, what this young guy, Operation Dudula, Moeletsi thinks, he will take my vote, so I must deport somebody. So I must deport these Zimbabweans. So that Operation Dudula, doesn't form its own party against the ANC or take our vote and give it to Action SA. Action SA, its leader is very hot against the African so-called illegal immigrants, so etc. So now the ANC, we were in exile with the ANC and the PAC in these other African countries. There were rules about it. We followed rules. There were refugee conventions. There are all sorts of rules. But we don't implement those rules in South Africa. Why don't you? Then you ask them, they won't tell you why they don't implement. You see? So that's why, we're having a government that doesn't care about the welfare of the people of South Africa. And that's what's at the bottom of the problem. It doesn't care. The fact that we have stunted children and they are the ones who have the first information because they collect the information, but they still don't care.
And what does the other side look like in your view when you look at all the experiences that you've had, not just on the African continent, but also in Europe? What do we need in place in South Africa for us to be able to move forward effectively to the country that we were all hoping we would have 30 years in? What does that take? What are the things that we need to be cognizant of, and what are the questions we need to be asking as we put our vote next to a political party?
Well, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is our political party the right tool to achieve the South Africa that we want? Now, for nearly 100 years, South Africans, or at least Black South Africans, thought the ANC was the right tool. I thought the ANC was the right tool. My family thought the ANC was the right tool. Man, millions of South African families of all races thought the ANC was the right tool. Then it starts being a Black party or promoting Black advantage. And then when I look closer, I find that who are the beneficiaries of this so-called Black advancement policies? It's the politicians. It's not Black people. It's the politicians in the ANC. So you can see that, this was a tool for our liberation, but now it has changed into a tool against the welfare of the people of South Africa. So I'm afraid you have to then look for another tool that will do this better. And that's just the way history works. And we have to keep looking, and we have to keep working to develop new tools ourselves. We are not passive. We're part of the process. So
we are not passive. We are part of the process.
Yes. So we have to be active to build the tools that we want. I mean, your media, for example, is part of the tools for changing South Africa. So it's important that more and more people listen to it and participate in its program. Because the SABC, which is another important tool, which is even bigger than Cliff Central, but it's controlled by the ANC, and it will stop you from from criticizing the ANC government. So, we have to come to Cliff Central, So we have to use all the tools that are available to bring about the change. And my plea with South Africans, especially young South Africans, is not to be despondent. It's a long road. South Africa is better today than it was in 1994. So there was no Cliff Central in 1994. In 1990, the apartheid regime controlled all radio stations. I think, if I remember correctly, it controlled all TV stations, all radio stations. Today, the last figure I saw, we have over 120 radio stations. Some are community, some are commercial, some are state-owned, some are all sorts of things. So there has been an improvement, but let's keep building until we get what we want, what we're relatively happy about. Let's keep fighting also.
Let's keep fighting. I love that, because this is one of the things that I'm often going on about, is that we have the power, as the citizens, as each individual person, we have the power, and our power doesn't just stop at the ballot box. Our power also sits in the place where we become active, where we become part of the people that become the leadership. If you care about this country, you have to stand up. You have to put your hand up. You have to be the people that are all that start radio stations and start conversations, the people that start political parties, whether we agree with them or not. All of those people are saying, I'm not going to stand by and let my country kind of fall by the wayside or become something that I don't recognize or cannot leave for my children. So thank you very much for that thought, and definitely a lot to think about, especially with the issue of stunted growth. Especially with the issue of childhood nutrition. I think it is definitely something that a lot of people don't consider as a problem, as the foundation of bigger problems in the future. So thank you for coming on and having a very honest conversation with us about that. I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate you for coming on. And thank you for everybody that came on today, everybody that came on to listen, all of your comments. We could see your comments. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing all that you had to share with us. And I hope that going into the rest of the day, we have given you lots of things to think about, lots of things to talk about at the cooler, at the office, and lots of things that you can think about doing for the country that we are. Thank you for joining me this morning. We will see you next week. Thank you, Moeletsi. Thank you, Ithateng, for coming on. Fabulous show. Thank you very much, Simpiwe, for not killing me with the aircon today. Have a good day.